Hi, Skeetz. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Hi, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm very excited to be talking to you about what you do and how you got there. And I just have to say, I love your background. I'm always
Thank you.
obsessing over all the therapists' curated backgrounds. Mine is in flux at the moment, so I'm a sad plant here too.
I'm thinking about moving things around a little bit. So, but thank you.
Yes, I know I'm always tweeting and people notice. So
right. What you don't see is everything in our condo that needs to go to the storage unit, which is strategically behind my body. Right? Maybe a little bit of old printer right there, right over the shoulder, but
yes, we don't require much space to do this virtual therapy thing, so we can make our 20 feet.
Right. Yes. Staging.
I mean, that's something I never thought I would have to learn, right? Stage my background.
Right. Yeah.
Learning that. I feel like I'm learning that in the last couple of years.
Right. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about yourself, about your practice, just sort of the little bit of basics, so we know who we're talking to today.
So a little bit about myself. So I was born in Salem, Massachusetts, and grew up in the North Shore area of Massachusetts until I was 8. And my parents relocated to Houston. And so I pretty much grew up in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
Started 12-step people have this saying, growing up in public. So started growing up in public in Houston. And then this last year, my husband and I moved back to Massachusetts. And so am now growing up in public here. And struggled with some learning disability and neurodevelopmental disorder stuff my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And so my college journey is a long one.
Mm-hmm.
So my first big career, my first real career, was as a carpenter, because it was a family business and it was there, and it was something that it was just something I could grasp a hold of at that time in my life. And so I did that for a long time, and got to a really healed enough place in my life for that time in my life, and went back to school, and was so in love with the idea of going back to school that held my attention. That just held my focus for the remainder of what I had to do to get a bachelor's degree, and then what I went immediately into getting my master's, and graduated with my master's in 2018 with a 4.0, which is like I always have to say that, because there were moments in my college career where I had a 0.0 GPA. So that's a big deal for me.
Yes, congratulations. That's a big deal for
anybody,
but especially right if school has been a struggle.
Thank you. So 2018, and did that in Texas as an MFT. Went through a psychology program, Our Lady of the Lake, the Houston campus, and it's a master's of psychology degree that they offer, with a concentration at that time in what was called family, couple, and individual psychotherapy. So basically to prepare you for MFT licensure and LPC licensure.
Mm-hmm.
And I settled right into the MFT licensure. There was just so much about the the theory that just really grabbed a hold of me. And especially postmodern family therapy that just captured me from day one, and that's who I am.
Uh-huh. When you went back to college, did you know this was the path you were going to be on? Was this the intent?
So I was drawn to psychology really early in all of my college attempts. There was something about learning that stuff that was empowering for me. And for that time in my life to begin to have some different kind of language to put to stuff, that was a really huge thing for me. And so even when I was not in school, like I was always devouring different kinds of psychological literature, mainly a lot of for a long time, a lot of self-help stuff, and a lot of stuff that was, more for public consumption. But it was always something that I've always been really passionate about. Just people and how we work. It's wild. Yeah.
So it sounds like working with families, groups of people, I guess we should call them, was sort of where you were drawn initially, or that sort of over time more where you ended up?
So as I was wrapping up my bachelor's, my mindset was one that was very scientifically based, and had a really kind of strong misconception of different modalities of therapy and stuff as on a hierarchy. And so I had thought that the goal was psychology, like and like a clinical psychology track or a counseling psychology track, something like that. And then popped into the psychology office at Our Lady of the Lake. So I finished my degree at Sam Houston State, my bachelor's, and one of my last semesters, they had just opened their remote campus in the Woodlands. And right across from where that campus is the Montgomery Lone Star College University Center. And so that's where, at that time, where the Our Lady of the Lake program was in Houston, was in that building with a bunch of other stuff from other universities. And so I just popped in and just started having conversations with them. And it just felt so, just meeting the people in the program and the people that were running the program, it felt nice and safe, and they felt like cool people, and they drew me in. Yeah.
That's really interesting, right? That it wasn't so much about the theory and what you thought it was going to be, but it was really about what is the feel of this place, right? How do I feel?
Right. Yeah.
Being here and with these people. And I always think if we're going to spend years with people, we should like the people we're spending.
Years
of our life in these programs.
Right. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Really difficult years, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I still think it's been I went to graduate school 20 years ago this year, and so I've been reflecting about it, kind of talking with some of my friends from back then, and realizing how old they are, and but just how graduate school really, especially in this field, just kind of tears you down. I mean, you really have to unravel yourself and how you think and see the world and build it back up. So it's when people talk about going into this field, right? That's something I try to talk to them about. It's like, are you ready?
Right. Yeah. And that's just the beginning, right? That's just the beginning. Yeah. Yeah. And then we practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really, I was, I was burnt out when I finished. I I didn't realize that until a lot later than when I was burnt out. Right? But it definitely, yeah.
And then we have to go right into licensure, right? Two more years minimum.
Yeah.
So I supervise some social workers, and I've got a few that are finishing their LCSW and a few about halfway through, and that's something that they're realizing. They're like, I really cried because of all of this, and I'm just really getting to the starting point.
Yeah.
What I really want to do. So it's a hard thing. It's a lot to get where we are. And you're right. I think we don't realize how hard it is on us.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So I feel that when you say you were burnt out by it, I'm like, yeah, that is what happened. And then we're burnt out from the beginning.
Right. Yeah. I one of the things I've noticed here in the system in Massachusetts, it's a little bit different than Texas. The folks here, once you graduate, you work unlicensed. You're degreed, but you work unlicensed for a period of time, and then you can take the exam to get your license. And here in Massachusetts, you have to do that in a hospital or in a community mental health agency. And the caseloads these folks have, we're burning folks out here before they even get licenses. Like definitely the mental health crisis here in one of the most insured states is still, I worry a little bit that we're going to start having people dropping off like flies, just like medicine and just like teaching. I'm a little worried about that.
That's interesting. I really enjoy talking to people who are practicing in different states who have been in Texas. And I've practiced in many states, and I've been here the longest, but I find the system in Texas unique. We'll put it kindly.
What is it like for y'all there? What is it like for y'all there? Because I was an MFT. Yeah, I'm an MFT, so I know what it is like for me. I think for a little while we were the only ones that had the coveted private practice as associates. And now I think they've opened that up to LPCs, and I don't know what it's like for LCSWs.
Yeah, social workers, they have all their own rules, but just sort of the system of just lack of resources in Texas for such a large state, right? And Houston in particular is such a huge place. I mean, the number of people who live here is massive, but the amount of mental health resources is so small compared to other places.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's sort of what I mean where I say Texas is unique in that there is a huge amount of need here and not even a drop in the bucket of people to meet that need in systems. So,
and that's in the urban areas, right? That's in the urban areas. When you go out into the rural areas, like
Montgomery County.
What did I hear? A few years ago, 90 something percent of the counties in Texas didn't have an MD prescriber.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's insane.
That's scary. I feel that
Yeah,
makes me nervous when I hear things like that and stories
yeah,
about that, to not
yeah.
have anything, to really be on your own, and that's scary to me, for people just to not have access at all. And I think telehealth has changed things a lot. I don't know if you practiced in an office and moved to telehealth, or you always been telehealth.
My supervisor, my post-grad supervisor, has an expertise in telehealth and telehealth research, and so she pushed it from day one. So
Mm-hmm.
it was always something part of my that was part of my practice.
That's really great.
Mostly telehealth now. I'm
Mm-hmm.
3 days 3.5 days telehealth and 1 day in person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I had never planned on being telehealth at all until COVID.
Yeah.
And then that changed everything. Now I'm going to be 100% telehealth, but I see people from all over the state, which is really cool, right? We can see those people who live in these counties
Okay,
that don't have
cool.
any providers. So it's interesting with telehealth that it is expanding it, but also so few of us have any training on it, right? Like, that's really great that you had someone right there from the beginning to talk about it, because it is different. It's a different way of getting to know people.
Right. They like right around the time I graduated, the MFT board in Texas created gosh, 14, 16 something, I don't remember what it was, training requirement for doing telehealth. And they created a whole section in the licensing code for us. So they, like, right when I graduated, they started taking it really seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And so as my supervisor, who was also my clinical director as I went through grad school, she provided a lot of that training, and so yeah, I was right in it from day one, which I'm grateful for that timing, because it's
it's kind of the way I think a lot of us are headed, right, is to do more telehealth.
Right. Yeah. I'm trying to figure out where that sweet spot is. There's when it too much of one or the other, I can definitely feel it. But yeah.
Right, because it does feel different, right? Like, it's a feeling.
It does. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird how that happens. I think some people, I found it's better for them, like people that I worked with a lot in person, and they transitioned over to telehealth. Like, there were really cool things that happened. I see some people struggle with it a little bit. I struggle with it. It takes a lot for me to remain engaged. It takes a lot of work.
Yeah, I feel like I am very different in person than in telehealth. I'm taking notes. I'm having all my fidgets. Like, I have to actively do things with my body while I'm sitting here still. Because otherwise it is hard to not zone, whereas I never have that issue in person. I don't have to do anything.
Right. Yeah.
There's something different. So I'll have to we'll have to get the name of your clinical director, who's done some research on it, because I would love to.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Her name, her name is Stephanie Zapata, Dr. Stephanie Zapata. And she's now the clinical director, or the program director of the Houston Our Lady of the Lake program.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely link to some of her work because I guess sort of the theme of what we'll be talking about throughout this conversation is things that are changing in our world, in the therapy world, that we don't have a lot of research on yet, right? Telehealth is one. And then when we get into talking about your specialty, right, which is, I will let you describe that. And
Right.
which is also something that is, there's not a lot of research on it yet. And that's sort of how I got introduced to you. I was talking to somebody else about this topic, and they said, you know who's really good at this?
Yeah. So one of my specialties is working with folks that are in various forms of non-monogamous relationships. So working with individuals that are needing to, at least part of what they're wanting to do in therapy is process some of those experiences. And then working with relationships where they are struggling to overcome something, in their polycule or in their relationship or, somewhere else. And I kind of got there because a colleague, right when I was starting out, had an individual they were working with and needed to refer the partner and them for couples counseling, relationship counseling, and they were really suspicious and they had lots of questions. And as I began to have conversation with them, they revealed that they had some really terrible experiences with other relationship therapists. The last attempt at relationship therapy, the therapist was demanding that they end any extra-dyadic relationship. They have to end it, and was trying to convince them that's the only way they could do successful relationship therapy. And neither of them wanted that. They were both adamant, and it didn't move the therapist at all. And so, like, hearing that, I was really moved by that. And then also being a person that has had some negative, really heavy-handed therapy experiences in my life. Like, I'm very sensitive to that, and that's kind of where I started that work. And I found other people sharing similar experiences. Couples that were non-monogamous, having the idea that they were sex addicts forced upon them, and with therapists that can see nothing else but, no, this has to be sex addiction. This isn't basically saying this isn't a valid way to do relationship, right? And then I've also bumped into couples who, are two people or three, and I try to be deliberate about using different language of relationships where, people have had a therapist threaten to call CPS on them because doing relationship in that way is child abuse. It's child abuse. It's, so I'm really careful, and that working with people in non-monogamous relationship means a lot to me. Right? That's important work for me, just to flatten some of that stuff out, because that sucks.
Right. I mean, it sounds like you wanted people to be validated and treated like people.
And have a safe place, and get relational health care, right? Get relational health care, right? Sometimes we are so activated by stuff that's happening in our relationships that we need someone else to help us get through that, right? And that everybody deserves that. Everybody deserves that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Has it surprised you that this is kind of where you've become kind of an expert, a specialist in this?
I try. So I try not to be an expert in it. I try to let the people that I work with be the expert in it. I'm like the expert in my experiences with it, and hopefully bring some process expertise with it, right? I've always wanted to work with people on the fringes of sexual and relational and gender identity, right? I'm queer identified therapist, and so care for LGBTQIA plus folks, and other people that express their sexuality in ways that are different from the mainstream, right? And their gender identity, right? I've always wanted to work with those folks, and I think what I've wanted to do there is family therapy, right? I think family therapy there is really important. I think we're a population that's been captured by the LCSWs. No offense, and rightly so, right? We're when we're coming off of the AIDS crisis, and coming off of the wave of the AIDS crisis that we were in. You know, in many ways, we're still in the AIDS crisis, but coming off of that, we really needed the LCSWs, right? We really needed the social workers, but I think there's a gap there of like family and relational therapy, and LGBTQ folks and poly folks and trans folks. They have families, and not only family of origin, but the created family, right? And found family.
Yeah.
So
I do think there's a gap there in the training, right? And that's kind of what we talked about a little bit.
Right.
Before is, at least, and I can only speak from my experience. I can't speak to everyone's training experience, but with social work, they train us to do 1,000 things.
Right. Yeah. Right.
You get a couple of weeks on everything, because the understanding is that we're going to go work in hospitals and community-based settings, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
In the door, which is why, right? Maybe we saw a lot of people, like you said, coming off this one point in time, but that doesn't mean we necessarily have the deeper family therapy training. Some people will focus on that,
right. Yeah.
To kind of make a decision to specialize in that. And
yeah,
I know for myself, I certainly have worked with families along the way, because again, who shows up, that's who you see.
Right. Yeah.
But I know for myself, and this again is sort of also a catalyst for this space, is to keep learning, because a lot has changed in the 20 years that I went to school.
Yeah.
And especially in this realm, right? Relationship counseling, to even call it relationship counseling, right, is new.
Right.
Yeah. And to think, okay, now I have to I have a schema in my mind and I need to alter it. Okay, how do we do that?
Right.
Because people are living and in community and in family, and we can all talk about it now, which wasn't true.
Yeah.
So yeah, like there is, I feel like, a gap for a lot of us in training, and I hope people going to school now get more expansive training. But I think for a lot of us, and it sounds like a lot of your clients have had the experience where people just had no context that this is even a real option for people. Right?
Yeah.
To live in a larger relationship community.
You said something really really interesting, which is like I had to learn 1,000 things in grad school, right? And it's like I'm still newish to this. Let's see, graduated in 2018, October 2018 is when I got my associate license. So this will be 6 years, right? 5 years. And it's really starting to it's really starting to set in for me, how much I don't know, and how hard it is to really like develop new stuff. I'll be honest, I go to CEUs all year. Do I remember or apply a single thing?
Mm-hmm.
No. And that's been one of the, like, that's like, that's that being online and having the majority of that being online is maybe not, that's something that being online is not good for me.
Yeah.
Right? Because
I feel that 100%.
yeah. But like there's like I really started as a generalist, and I really loved the idea of being a generalist. And like I see the value also in deep diving into things, and to continue to, in the middle of all the CEU stuff, really pick something here and there to really do a deep dive on. Yeah.
Have you found many trainings, courses, sort of formal training on relationship counseling on the more expansive types of relationships, or is that something that has even been difficult for you to find?
So we are on the we are on the cusp of being saturated with some of these kinds of trainings right now. It's wonderful. I see a lot of the folks, in grad programs doing graduate schoolwork on this stuff and research, and lots of different corners of activity around this kind of stuff. So there is suddenly like an abundance of it, and it's wonderful. And anytime I talk to somebody new, I'm learning about a new text somebody has put out. There's a couple of publications that have come out through Routledge that are like texts now. We've got some texts, which is really cool. LGBTQIA plus affirming therapy. We've got some wonderful texts out now. So we're starting to really develop a substantial body of work there, and there's some just wonderful research and just cool folks out there doing stuff with this. And in the within the popular audience too, like Jessica Fern's Polysecure has just been this amazing resource that I rarely do I bump into somebody now that isn't familiar with it in non-monogamous contexts. So yeah, we have some cool stuff going on right now. It's exciting.
It's exciting to hear you say that, because I feel like it's time. It's past time.
Yeah. It is. It is.
Is there anything besides Polysecure that you recommend to people? Are there other books that you find that you end up talking about?
There's one I just heard about that I'm not familiar with, but it's a thick one, and I apologize for not knowing, and it will come to me in a month, like doing laundry or something. It'll just come to me, and I'll email you.
Okay, great.
Let me look really quick so I give you the right. There it is. So this is one really. Here's a couple right here, right? So Polysecure, definitely. Polysecure is a big one, and really is founded in Jessica Fern's application of attachment theory to non-monogamous relationships. Really, really cool presentation of these ideas. I had some people that I was working with get a lot of use out of this book opening up.
Okay.
Almost like a manual for opening up relationships by Tristan Termino, and my apologies to Tristan if I pronounced that wrong. A really nice, compact, really useful clinical text is the Rhea Orion Therapist Guide to Consensual Non-Monogamy, which it's a few years old now, but it is a quick read, and it's nice and compact and research based, and a wonderful text. Let's see. On digitally, I have the Poly Breakup book, which really gives some. I like that one because it gives a really cool presentation of non-monogamous relationships as they're contrasted from monogamous relationships, and then of course like the classics like The Ethical Slut and things like that. So.
Okay, that's a great list. I will link to all of those when I make our show notes.
Yeah, and there's stuff coming out all the time. There's podcasts. There's so many podcasts. Like I couldn't even begin to
Okay, when we're done, think about like your top 3 and email me.
Right. Okay. Yeah. It's just there's good stuff happening right now. Yeah. So. Yeah, good stuff happening right now with those communities. Yeah.
Yeah. Are there terms, language, as this all kind of evolves, right? And terms and language changes.
Right.
Are there terms that you feel like therapists should know when talking to people about non-monogamy or polyamory? Are there other words we should be using or not using?
I always like to ask people for the language that they use, right? That's important to me. And then beyond that, I wish people would let go of the assumption of monogamy in how we talk about relationship. It's something I struggle with, right? And it's something I'm working on. But by using language that isn't inclusive, we're communicating something, right? And it could just be that we're unaware, but we're communicating something. So, relationship therapy, and I try to correct myself when I catch myself, and relationships, and partners, and assuming monogamy. Yeah, not assuming monogamy.
I think part of, I said this for myself and talking to other people, like, we're also afraid of offending people.
Right.
Right. And saying the wrong thing. And it's, as I age, but my clients stay young.
Yeah.
They have, for some reason, always, I don't know, I tend to see young adults, and that's been true for 20 years, that language has changed a lot. And I know I have made some mistakes, and later on thought, oh my gosh, I said the absolute wrong thing. I hope they can chalk it up to me being old and not insensitive.
Right. Yeah.
And it can hold us back, right? Maybe we're afraid to see certain clients because we're like, I don't know what to do.
Right.
So I always try to ask people who are kind of in it, like, are there words people are using now? Is there language? Are there things we shouldn't say?
Right. There's I love the language that a community of folks socially constructs, and I love to watch how that changes over time. And yeah, I do. It scares me sometimes, right? As getting almost 50, right? Like, like the young folks that are, coming out and just coming into adulthood these days, they're like a completely different generation. Right? And yeah, I'm just like, I love the lens of cultural humility, right? Just I don't know, and I'm going to take your lead, right? I'm going to take your lead, and I'm going to do that with respect and with curiosity, and and with an openness to learn, and there are some commonly used terms, though, right? So, polyamorous, right? So multiple amorous love, right? So these are relationships of more than two partners in various configurations where love is a major variable in how we do relationship. Then, various forms of non-monogamy. Non-monogamy, in one way of looking at it, could be an umbrella term, right? And underneath, you would have people that swing or refer to themselves being in the lifestyle, which is, typically something people do for just sexual variety and some adventure, right? And many people in those kinds of relationships might not even see themselves as really being non-monogamous. And then, one way of looking at it could be a spectrum from, something I do to something I am, right? And so, one thing I like to assess for when I'm having conversations with folks is this identity for you? Like, is this is who I am, or is this is just something we do once a month on a Saturday night, right? Is it that kind of a thing? Because there's millions and millions of people in between, right? That are, variations on that. One of the things that's becoming a lot more prevalent, I think, is the idea of relationship anarchy and non-hierarchical poly. So you might have somebody say, we don't. So you might have somebody say, this is my, I got into a fight with Bob this week. Oh, who's Bob again? Bob's my primary partner, right? People might use like primary, secondary language. Oh, well, I thought, what about Cindy, right? What about Cindy? No, Cindy's one of my secondary partners, right? And so some people might do that, have a hierarchical form of poly. And you're finding a lot of people today more and more talk about non-hierarchical poly, right? Every partner being on the same level, right? And yeah, it's really neat, really rich language and way of looking at and describing experience. It's really, really cool.
That was very helpful. That was some language that makes sense for me with the case that I've been having questions about, and that actually put some language to it that helps me understand it a little bit better. Awesome. This is good.
Very cool.
Do you find it? How do I want to say? As a therapist, is it any more complicated to be working in larger groups of relationships than couples, or is it easier, or a lot more people involved?
Yes, yeah. So depending on the arrangement of folks, it can be more complex. It's definitely, all of the work is a lot more complex. One of the things that I find a struggle is not as much how many people are there, but how many people that aren't there that should be there. That should be part of the conversation, right? And people speaking on behalf of, and so one of the navigating, so like to use a systemic lens, right? So with a couple, like if we want to like just make an oversimplified like engineering line drawing of it, right? Like typically what you see in couples therapy is something triggers partner A, they react. The reaction is a trigger for partner B, they react. This reaction is a trigger for partner A. They react, and then boom, we're in the thing, right? We are in the shit. There's more of that in relationships with multiple partners, right? So, like one throuple in particular, I think the first throuple I ever had in the room, you had one relationship of 15 years. And you had then a relationship of 6 months, and so you've got this brand new relationship energy, and the trigger for partner B isn't like the pain that partner A is causing me by their reaction, but it's my fear that I'm going to lose partner C because of their behavior, because of partner A's behavior. And so I'm triggered by this loop, but my reactivity is because of this loop, right? And it's like, so like whatever theoretical lens you use when you're working with people, like it adds some, right? Whether that's like cognitive or emotionally focused, or whatever you use, it adds some layers to it.
Yeah, it's like a much higher level of math here.
Yeah, right. And the cool thing is the cool thing about it is you have the experts on it in the room, right? You have the experts on it right there.
Yeah.
So that's the cool thing about it. So it's I'm not alone, and you know, the people that know are there. So yeah, that part makes it a little easier.
And I would assume there's some similarities to, family therapy, right? When you have lots of
very much, right?
Various
very much. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Very much. Very much. Almost all of those relational lenses and approaches, they work very well regardless of what the relationship is.
Kind of tying this into the telehealth, how does that work with having multiple people in telehealth? Are they in the same room usually, or?
Yeah, so if I'm working with two folks, right? If I'm working with a dyad or a couple or other form of two people, I like for them to be in the same frame.
Okay.
I like for them to be in the same frame. I want you next to each other. That's a little bit navigating those dynamics in telehealth is a little bit of a struggle sometimes, and sometimes there's some stuff missing that you pick up on a little easier when you're in the same room as folks. Now, when we talk about three people, right? That's a lot to fit in a frame, right? And a lot of folks, like, my wish is that all of us on the planet had high resolution everything, and we all had the the owl teleconferencing that pans to the person that's talking, but a lot of people just have a phone, right? And they've got it balanced against the takeout box from dinner last night, right?
Or in the car.
Right. Or at least that's how I'm going to show up to my couples therapy or my relationship therapy. And so sometimes having, if you're working with two people, having them in different frames can be better. One of the really cool things about working in different states is you will get people that will pop up saying, hey, we need somebody that's licensed here and here, right? I work with, I've got two folks right now, or one couple, one individual right now that are Texas and Massachusetts back and forth. So, so that's, but yeah, so, different frames can be helpful. Sometimes that can help with some things, and sometimes it's the only option with multiples. Right. Sometimes, the more people in some relationship formation, the more spread out they're going to be. You're going to have some people that live together, some that don't, some that might not even be in the same state, maybe sometimes, which adds, then we have to have ethics and legal conversations, and, I can work with you, I can't work with you, and unless you're visiting them. And
right, that's something I hadn't even really consciously thought of, is so many people are in long distance online relationships, particularly post-COVID. Right?
Yeah,
but that does make it complicated. We need these interstate compacts to happen.
Right. So coaching is an option. Coaching is an option. That has to be clearly laid out and demarcated and clearly separated from psychotherapy, right? And we have to document our agreement in that way, right? But I think I find when you have more people in a relationship formation, they tend to be a lot more goal oriented, and they typically have their own therapists anyways for mental health stuff. So coaching is a good modality for some of those situations.
That's an interesting way of making it work. Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it would be so nice if we didn't have to do that. Right.
Right, right.
I
Yeah,
often ask
yeah.
people, like, what's one systemic thing that could change that would make your life easier? Sounds like
Right, right.
being able to be licensed in multiple states. It would make all of our lives
It's
easier.
I I get the pros and cons both ways, right? I get the pros and cons both ways. But it I don't think it serves us being as fragmented as we are.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think like there's a mental health crisis everywhere, but the mental health crisis in Massachusetts doesn't look anything like the mental health crisis in Texas, right? So um, giving people a little more freedom of motion, I think would just be better for everybody all over the country, giving therapists a little more freedom of motion
Right.
and
And people
interstate
move.
licensure.
Right.
Yeah,
Clients move
right.
all the time. We move. I mean,
What do you do if you move to California, right? That's the nightmare situation, right? A spouse gets the job of their dreams in California and we have to get licensed in California, not having, developed professionally there, right? It's never going to happen. Oh,
no.
good. Oh, you have to go back to a year of grad school to make up these classes. And then you have to do all your hours over again. And it's like, so having, and I'm sure, but then there's the individual identity. I'm sure California would defend the way they do things, right? And I'm sure there's a lot of people there that believe in their system,
Yeah.
So,
And I do think there's something to be said for living in a community and understanding the dynamics of that community as a therapist. As I expand my practice, that's even, I've expanded to North Carolina. I was just saying I haven't lived in it 20 years. I will live there again, right? But it's changed a lot. And so I've started seeing people there, and I have to really think about, they live in a very different community than where I am at the moment. And that is impacting them. And so that also makes it just another complexity to all of it is, I don't know what the answer is. It is complex, but it's got to be better than what we're doing.
Yeah. This is where I am now is for any way you might look at it, a different country than where I've lived the last 40 years. It is seriously a different country, right? It has a very different culture and identity. Different food, different ways of being, different ways of, looking at the world, different ways of doing life, different ways of doing community. I mean, just different weather, completely different, right?
Right.
So I am I am so vibing with that idea, right? Yeah, it's a trip. That piece of it is a trip. It has been very different.
Right. Learning what it's like in Massachusetts now, but still trying to stay connected to what's happening to Houston because you still see people in Houston. Yeah. So that's just, there's so many, when we go to school, we don't realize all these levels of all these things that we're going to have to keep learning.
Right. And so let me give you this unexpected piece of it for me as in myself of the therapist stuff, right? Survivor's guilt, grew up as a young queer kid in Houston and Texas, very, very closeted, right? And then coming out. And at the time I came out, Harris County was the leading county in the United States for anti-LGBTQ hate crimes. And so coming out into that and seeing wonderful transformation of Harris County and the bigger urban areas in Texas in my young adult life, that's to have been part of that and to have seen that is just the coolest freaking thing. And Texas is still very different and still not completely there. And so now moving here and moving to an HRC score of 100% community, right? From Houston, which has I think 76, right? But still that difference, and being able to put that burden down for myself personally, and then working with maybe some of my folks in Houston who might be artists that do drag, or who might be exploring their gender identity and wanting to start doing that in some public ways. And so I do have some moments of survivor's guilt that come up for me in myself of the therapist stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can definitely understand that and see that. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it is different countries when it comes to that.
Right. It is. And we definitely have our, we have the same people here, right? Just the ratios are very different. Very different, right?
Right. And kind of we were saying earlier, where you live impacts your mental health.
Right.
Especially
there is,
comes to your
right. Yeah. No one will ever get elected here that can take away my marriage. No one. I will never lose my marriage here. Is there a chance of that happening in Texas? Are there people that are sitting there strategizing to figure out the case that they're going to be able to run up the hierarchy to the Supreme Court and get Alito or Clarence Thomas to overturn Obergefell? Oh yeah. And they publicly said so, right? So it's not even a far-fetched fear, right? It's people actively and with the numbers to, they're dwindling, but they're still in enough numbers where they can impact people's lives in devastating ways. Yeah.
No, I understand that. And I'm returning to a not as progressive state, but still better than Texas.
Right. Yeah.
And I have been feeling some of that for I feel like I need to leave for many reasons, and one of them is
right.
I feel like I can't.
Right. Yeah. So it's the other part of that for me. The other part of that for me is that doesn't mean that there isn't racism and unnoticed, unconscious bias here in the way people do things and talk about people and interact with people and do life here, right? It's that's been really interesting. Is the racism is so different here. It is really and some of the other isms that are a little more prevalent here. It's been comparing that has been fascinating, and the dichotomy and how people react to the dichotomy, but the blind spots it leaves people with, right?
Yeah.
I think because of states like Texas, it leaves folks in Massachusetts that might have some underlying stuff. It leaves that stuff unobserved and festering because we're not Texas. We're not Mississippi, right?
Right.
We are so much better than them and so much more educated, and we're just we're better, right? And so then we don't examine ourselves up here, right?
Yeah. Oh, I think that. Yep.
That's been an interesting thing, is comparing that. So
yeah. Thank you so much for
certainly. Yes, anytime.
And the resources, and you actually helped me conceptualize something a little bit differently today that will be very helpful. I'm definitely gonna check out some of these books, and we will link to all of it. How can people find you if they're interested in scheduling an appointment?
Right now, www.Skeetz Edinger Family Therapy or www.polymft.com takes you to my site as well. Yeah, either one of those. Skeetz Edinger Family Therapy is a lot to get right when you're, typing it into a phone or a device or so.
Yeah.
But PolyMFT will take you to where to find me as well. And yeah.
Great.
And I'm always happy. I love talking to people about this work. And so if there's anybody out there that is needing or wanting some supervision or some consultation around working with folks that are in some form of non-monogamous relationship or LGBTQIA families, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you